Well, so what are we gonna do today, Cousin BW?
The same thing we do every day, Melvin. Try to take over the neighborhood.
Hey y'all, Bloodwing here, back to bring some grumpiness to your internet. And boy, have I got a special treat for you today. The person we're going to look at today is a special kind of crazy. You know, in the past I've considered doing what some others in our community have done and take on some of the flat earthers.
Well, Cousin BW, if the earth is flat, does that mean we can all run to one side of the earth and jump up and down and tip it over?
I don't know, Melvin. Maybe. Be funny to try though, wouldn't it? But anyway, I've never really took on the flat earthers because I thought they were just big lolcows, just stupid. Not particularly dangerous. But thanks to the pagan Minotaur, and you all can figure out on your own whether we should thank him or not when this is over, who directed me to this video and to this person, I have found a flat earther that is not only a flat earther, but they are anti-Semitic, white supremacist flat earther who also denies the existence of AIDS, and according to them, they are a nurse. Yeah, you heard me right on all points. So, at any rate, let's jump right into this thing, shall we?
Welcome to my channel. I'm Daphne, your Flat Earth nurse.
Flat Earth nurse. Already we know we're in for a treat.
And this is part 2 of the AIDS hoax revealed. Today we're going to be talking about all different kinds of things regarding what you've seen in the media, as well as whether or not you think it's maybe possible for someone to live with the plague. I would like to also put in a disclaimer here for everybody who hadn't already seen part 1 to please understand that I am not telling you to not wear condoms. I'm not telling you not to use condoms. Anything you do with this information is your responsibility. Your life is your responsibility. Your choices are what you make them. I appreciate you listening, I appreciate you tuning in, and most of all, I appreciate you listening with an open mind.
I want you to remember that she says this because later we'll come back to that. But for right now, she's claiming she's trying to tell people, not trying to tell people that not to use condoms. Yeah.
To bring you this information, I have received multiple death threats. I have put my nursing license on deactivate so that nobody has anything to take from me. I do not want to make this video for you. I am compelled to.
Now earlier I made some claims about her being anti-Semitic and white supremacist and so forth. And you won't see evidence of that in this video. But I had done some research on this lady. This is not her first attempt at a channel. May not even be the second. But I know the channel before this got shut down, probably because of her white supremacy. But also she was always in the face of YouTube about being demonetized. And if you do a little search on the internet using her name here, you will find tons of websites dedicated to just following this lolcow. And the crazy things that she's been into, even to the point of claiming that certain celebrities are part of conspiracies and whatnot. She's known to run several sock accounts that even talk to one another and support one another. Yeah, she's a real piece of work. And I would be very skeptical about believing anything that she says. But you'll be able to judge how crazy she is before we get through here. Now, as far as her comment about deactivating her license, that kind of rang odd to me, so I looked it up, and it is true that in some states, if you have a nursing license, you can put it on deactivate, and that's in case you're not going to be practicing for a little while or whatnot. But it's not just a simple act of saying, hey, I want to deactivate it a while. It costs money. it cost a lot of money to deactivate it and put it on hold, and it cost another lot of money to reactivate it. So something tells me we're not hearing this whole story here. You're not just going to deactivate it to run a YouTube channel that you know you've been getting demonetized on. It just doesn't ring true. My suspicion is that she was probably on the periphery of the healthcare profession, maybe a receptionist or something. But I have my doubts she was a full-blown nurse, and we'll get into exactly why I have serious doubts before this is over, but I just wanted to voice that for now.
Today I am drinking red wine instead of my normal green drink because this topic makes my blood pressure just go through the roof.
Red wine, green drink, red wine out of a mason jar with a straw, and they say that I'm the uncouth redneck.
I would like to ask you if you've ever noticed why it seems like only celebrities get AIDS or HIV.
It's not.
I would like you to ask yourself if you've ever wondered why you don't really know a lot of people with AIDS or HIV.
I do. I've known 2 people in my life. I actually spoke at a funeral several years ago of a young lady I knew all her life that died of AIDS.
I would also like you to ask yourself if you have ever met anybody, even one person, who has also had West Nile, SARS, the bird flu, the swine flu, Ebola, or the Zika virus.
Actually, I have. I knew somebody that had the bird flu. Now what?
I would like you to ask yourself why we, as a people, are bombarded with disease after disease after disease after disease, and told that they are highly contagious, completely deadly, and are plagues.
You're using a word there, plague, that I think is meant to poison the well. Because, as far as I heard, that's not what we're being told that AIDS is, or have been. In certain parts of the world, certainly it might be considered a plague, such as in parts of Africa and whatnot. But if you go to the CDC website, which I think would probably be pretty knowledgeable on the subject of AIDS, it's described as an epidemic. And the definition of an epidemic is a widespread occurrence of an infectious disease in a community at a particular time. And that would be very fitting, since AIDS seems to be confined primarily to certain communities, such as the gay community, those that use intravenous drugs and share needles. Also is very prevalent among the black community. So that would be an appropriate definition, not a plague. I think you're confusing it with another similar word that's called pandemic, which is not being used here. And a pandemic is of a disease prevalent over a whole country or the world. And that's not what's ever been said about HIV. Now we'll get into just how many people are affected and have been affected in the past and whatnot as we go along. But you really should use the correct words, unless what you're trying to do is poison the well.
I'd like you to ask yourself why you can go into a hospital and ask them to show you the AIDS patients, the West Nile patients, the SARS patients, the bird flu patients, the swine flu patients, the Ebola patients, and the Zika patients, and tell me what your conclusion is when you realize that the combined number for all is 0.
This statement right here is the one biggest example to me on why I think she's never been a nurse. Because if she were a nurse, she'd be fully aware that there are federal laws in this country about privacy, and that are made primarily for the health industry. Although they do affect other things, that's what they were primarily made for. You cannot walk into a hospital and ask that kind of information. They will tell you nothing. In fact, even if you have a loved one, I'll give you an example. The last time my father was in the hospital and in serious condition, we had to give them a list of people that were allowed to have updates on his condition. And anybody that called that was not on that list, no matter whether they were related to him or whatever, could not get that information. And you had to give a PIN number to the person on the other end of the line in order for them to be okay to give you that. They will not give you that information. I call BS. You've never been a nurse, you nutcase. But besides that, do you really think that you're just going to walk off the streets, even if we didn't have those laws, and they're just going to take and show you around? Oh, here's all our AIDS patients. Here's all our SARS patients. Here's all our Ebola patients. Right. But because they don't give you that information does not make the amount of those patients zero. That's false.
There are no patients in hospitals with these diseases. There isn't a swine flu ward. There isn't an AIDS ward. There isn't an AIDS floor. There aren't AIDS nurses. There aren't AIDS doctors. The only people I have encountered that can be considered AIDS doctors are specialists in the area who go on to prove that it's a fraud. We'll talk about that in part 3.
Really? Well, I put in a simple Google search of AIDS doctors in the United States, and the very first link led me to the CDC, which stated that there were over 19,000 organizations that specialize in it. And I'm sure each one of those organizations have numerous doctors on their directory. Where are you looking?
So I'd like to go over why this happens. Why the AIDS? Why the bird flu? Why the swine flu? Why all those things? And the answer is that you're more valuable when you're scared shitless. You're more valuable when you think that your innocent case of diarrhea or your innocent yeast infection or your innocent running nose could kill you. You're more valuable that way. That way you might go to a hospital. This whole thing is to scare people. Many of them actually get really, really afraid and go to a hospital and think that they have the swine flu or the bird flu. But as I've said in part 1, and I will say again, you did not have the bird flu. You did not have the swine flu. You had the flu and then you said whatever animal in front of it. Dog flu, bird flu, monkey flu. It's all irrelevant because it's all bullshit and it's all made up. They're making up diseases to scare the shit out of people, but the money is truly made when people believe that a disease is sexually transmitted. Because then people can be even more afraid. Yeah, afraid enough to buy condoms, afraid enough to use condoms, afraid enough to get tested, afraid enough to think that somebody that they know might have AIDS and not know it.
Now, I was raised to question everything. And I do. But there's a fine line between questioning everything and going over into full-blown idiocy, into craziness. And this lady has crossed it a long time ago. Her arguments don't even make any sense. And this argument she just made makes even less sense, as we'll find out going on, because we'll find out what it is she thinks that they're selling. Okay, because of the AIDS epidemic. But for a moment, let me back up just a little bit. And her whole argument here seems to be because you don't know anybody, or she doesn't know anybody, or very many people that have died of AIDS or these other diseases, therefore they just don't exist. Okay? So let me give you a couple of things here that I've thought of that shows just how stupid that line of thinking is. At the moment, the U.S. population is about 322 million, give or take. According to the CDC website, 1.1 million people in the U.S. are living with HIV, and 1 in 7 of those don't even know they have it. So you can take a little bit from that 1.1 million. So only 1 in about 324 people are going to have it. If you live in a small area or a rural area or a smaller city, not New York or LA or anything, pretty good chance you might not run across someone. That doesn't make it not exist. If you live in a larger area like New York, LA, Chicago, something like that, chances are you might run into several. I live in a medium-sized city, and as I already said, I've known 2 people in my life that's died from AIDS. One I knew very personally. Let's look at another example that shows just how stupid this is. The number of people that speak Mandarin Chinese is roughly about 1 billion. That's about 1 in 6 people that speak this language.
Well, Cousin BW, that's a whole lot of people right there. And to my knowledge, we don't know anybody that speaks Mandarin Chinese.
That's right, Melvin, it is a lot of people. And you're right, to my knowledge, I don't know anybody that speaks Mandarin. Therefore, by her logic, since I don't know anybody that speaks it, even though there are 1 in 6 people that speak the language, therefore it must not exist. See how stupid that is?
Well, wow, Cousin BW, it must be them there aliens. The aliens is a brainwashing us, and they're making us believe that there's really Chinese people in the world when they're not.
Melvin, shut up.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. If I took apart every point she makes in this video, I'd be here for hours. And I don't want to do that and spend that kind of time on her. But she goes on to pretty much say that it's to sell condoms. Even though she's not against us using condoms, it's to sell condoms. And she blames a lot of sexually transmitted, or what's called sexually transmitted diseases, on the use of condoms. Not the lack of use, but on the use of condoms. And she even goes so far to say that the reason people show AIDS-like symptoms within homosexuals is because their anal cavity is too caked with semen that they cannot absorb nutrition. I kid you not. If you don't believe me, watch the rest of it. But I did want to catch this last part of it. Originally, this was a 3-part video, but she's spliced it together. I'm giving it to you the way that I found it. And I wanted to address something that she addresses in this next part of the video.
Welcome back to my channel. I'm your Flat Earth Nurse. This is part 3 of the AIDS hoax exposed. I am sorry for my viewers. I'm sorry to inform you, especially for those of you who are really excited for more information on this, that this is my final video on this. That I have received enough backlash and enough death threats that this is it. This is my last video on this. There's way more information than this, but I'm going to give you all you need to do in order to do that research on your own. I'd like to mention Dr. David Raznik. If you would like to hear what this doctor has to say about AIDS and HIV not being related, and how HIV is harmless, and how everything you've been told is a lie, and how if something is sexually transmitted that it becomes more profit generating, just put into the YouTube search bar Dr. David Raznik and it'll pop right up, and it's very interesting.
Dr. David Raznik. Yes, he is an AIDS denier. And yes, he's a doctor. A PhD doctor, not a medical doctor. He's a biochemist who somehow found himself on an AIDS panel in South Africa by South African President Thabo Mbeki. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And because of his bad advice, one website I looked at estimated that 330,000 lives were lost in South Africa between the year 2000 and 2005 because of the delayed use of antiretrovirals because of his advice. And another website, the website that I've linked below about people that have died, deniers that have died from AIDS. If you click one of the other links, it'll lead you to this little thing about Dr. Raznik. And I'm just going to read this to you here real quickly so we know what we're dealing with. According to Wikipedia, Dr. David Raznik is a biochemist who has worked on proteases. He is, however, best known for his AIDS denialism and is a past president of the Group for the Scientific Reappraisal of the HIV/AIDS Hypothesis. The Cape High Court found that David Raznik, Matthias Rath, and others conducted an unauthorized clinical trial on people with HIV. The judgment can be found here if you click the link. Rath, Resnick, and others were responsible for a trial that recruited people dying of AIDS to their health facilities in Cape Town and Durban. Patients were given multivitamins as a treatment for AIDS instead of ARVs. Investigations by the Treatment Action Campaign and journalists have shown that several deaths occurred on the trial. Rath, Raznik, and the other trial investigators published the results as a series of newspaper advertisements, something that is considered unethical in scientific research. None of these advertisements, which in any case portray data that is nonsensical, refer to the deaths on their trial. For further details, see The Wrongs of Matthias Rath. Raznik is a dishonest person who has put the lives of poor and vulnerable people at risk with deadly consequences. His dishonesty extends to claiming credit for the invention of protease inhibitors. David Raznik is identified on the Denialist Alive and Well website's advisory board list to be the creator of protease inhibitors. Similar claims are repeated on other denialist websites and in denialist literature. To have created protease inhibitors would be something to boast about. They have saved the lives of millions of people with HIV, and their invention was a breakthrough in HIV treatment. But Raznik shouldn't get the credit. It is true that Raznik worked in a laboratory where some protease inhibitors were developed. It is not true that Raznik himself invented that class of drugs. He is not listed on any patents that have been granted in respect of the use of these drugs, something that would be true of an inventor. Furthermore, the chemicals Raznik helped to develop are not used for the treatment of HIV infection, though it would be ironic if they were. Raznik has also misinterpreted his affiliation, calling himself a visiting professor at the University of California, Berkeley. Raznik is and was no such thing. Dr. Peter Duisberg, who is a faculty member at Berkeley and a close friend of Raznik, allowed Raznik to use his laboratory. The university has debunked this false claim. And I quote, "I understand David Raznik claimed an affiliation with our department in an article in the Citizen, April 7th. David Raznik has no affiliation with the University of California, Department of Molecular and Cell Biology. One should obviously be concerned that someone who misrepresents his own affiliation might also misrepresent data and arguments in other areas. Richard Harlan, Ph.D., University of California, Berkeley Department of Molecular and Cell Biology." Professor Harlan is exactly right. Denialists lie about who they are and who supports them. They cannot be trusted with the truth about HIV and AIDS. And I'm going to end this video here. I can't take no more of this idiot. And the reason I decided to do this, like I said, flat earthers I just see as lolcows, but this is dangerous. People use precaution. AIDS is real. And if you have it, take your medicines. This kind of junk that's represented in this video is dangerous. Just as dangerous as the anti-vaxxers and all of that other stuff. Anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. And as always, get out of my yard.